It was 6:40 in the morning at Vanessa Airport in Los Angeles. The sky was still gray, that heavy kind of gray that comes before the sun decides to show up. The tarmac smelled like cold fuel and wet concrete. Ground workers moved between jets in orange vests, their breath coming out in small white clouds. At the far end of the private terminal, a man stepped out of a black SUV. Alone. No assistant, no driver holding a sign. No security trailing behind him. Just him. A worn gray hoodie, dark joggers, white sneakers that had seen better days, a single duffel bag over one shoulder and a phone in his hand. His name was Marcus Elliott. If you searched that name, you'd find almost nothing. No interviews, no magazine covers, no social media presence worth mentioning. Just a quiet LinkedIn profile with a job title that said almost nothing about what he actually controlled. Marcus was 49 years old. He grew up in South Chicago. His mother cleaned office buildings at night and took the bus home before sunrise. His father left when Marcus was 6. He won a partial scholarship to State University, worked 2 jobs through college, graduated with honors, and spent the next 22 years building Ridgeline Group from a small freight brokerage into a $3.8 billion logistics and infrastructure company with contracts across 9 states. He didn't look like any of that. He dressed that way intentionally. Always had. Marcus believed something most wealthy people never bother to test: strip away the suit and the watch and the car, then see how people treat you. That's the truth of who they are. He walked through the private terminal, nodded to the woman at the front desk. She waved him through without asking for ID. She had checked him in over 40 times. Out on the tarmac, his aircraft sat waiting, a Gulfstream G600, tail number RG-58. $58 million of precision engineering registered under Ridgeline Group. Marcus was the sole owner. He managed it through a charter company called Summit Skies Aviation, which handled crew scheduling, maintenance, and all ground operations. He climbed the air stairs. The cabin door opened. That familiar smell hit him first: cool leather, polished walnut, a trace of cedar from the air system. The interior was navy and cream. 4 wide seats in the main cabin, a work table with embedded screens, a private sleeping area behind a frosted glass partition at the rear. Marcus settled into his regular seat, window side, second row. He put his duffel on the seat beside him, pulled out his phone, and started reviewing acquisition documents. He was flying to Charlotte to close a $280 million purchase of a regional infrastructure company. Just another Tuesday for a man who built things quietly and let the numbers speak. Now, let me introduce the other person in this story. Diane Fenton. 46 years old. Senior flight attendant with Summit Skies Aviation. 14 years at the company. Red hair pulled back sharp. Pressed uniform. A smile thin enough to cut glass. Among her co-workers, Diane had a reputation. The professional version was demanding. The honest version, whispered in crew lounges and airport shuttles, was something harder to say out loud. A pattern had been noticed over the years. Diane treated passengers of color differently. Shorter patience, longer stares, colder voice. 3 formal complaints had been filed against her. One from a black doctor on a charter to Houston. One from a Latino family on a New Year's flight. One from a young black woman traveling alone for a job interview. All 3 were investigated. All 3 were closed. No action taken. This morning, Diane was not supposed to be on this flight. Her regular assignment had been grounded due to a mechanical issue. She was reassigned to the charter 20 minutes before boarding. She arrived hurried. She did not review the passenger manifest. She did not check the client file. She walked onto the jet, stepped into the main cabin, and saw Marcus Elliott sitting in the owner's suite. A black man in a hoodie and worn sneakers sitting in the most expensive seat on the aircraft. Her smile disappeared. Her back went straight. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't ask who he was. She didn't check the system. She didn't call the front desk. She assumed. And that assumption was about to unravel her entire life. Diane didn't walk toward Marcus. She marched, heels clicking hard against the cabin floor like she was counting down to something. She stopped directly in front of him. No greeting, no warmth. She crossed her arms and looked down at him the way you look at something that doesn't belong. I'm going to need to see your boarding documentation. Not a question. An accusation wearing professional clothing. Marcus looked up from his phone. He didn't react to her tone. He opened the Summit Skies app and held the screen toward her. The charter confirmation showed his name, the flight number, the tail number, today's date. Diane glanced at it for maybe 2 seconds. Then she tilted her head and made a short sound through her nose. A laugh that wasn't a laugh. A booking confirmation doesn't tell me you're authorized for this section. She said this section like the words tasted expensive. Marcus put his phone down. His voice was flat and even. I'm exactly where I should be. Diane's jaw tightened. Look, I don't know what mix-up happened at the front desk, but this is the owner's suite. It's reserved. There are standard seats in the rear. I'd suggest you get comfortable back there. She added a smile at the end. The kind with nothing behind it. Marcus didn't respond. He put his headphones on and went back to his phone. That silence did something to Diane. You could see it shift in her posture. Her nostrils flared. Her fingers curled. She was not used to being ignored. She was definitely not used to being ignored by someone she had already decided was beneath her. She turned, grabbed Marcus's duffel bag off the seat beside him with both hands, and started walking toward the back of the plane. I'll get you settled in the rear. You'll be more comfortable. She didn't ask. She just started moving with his bag like the matter was decided. Marcus stood. When he rose, the cabin changed. He was 6 feet 1 inch, broad, and even in a gray hoodie, there was something in the way he held himself that made the room feel smaller. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't move toward her. He just said, clearly, firmly, with the kind of calm that doesn't need volume. Put my bag down. I'm not going anywhere. Diane froze. She turned slowly, still holding the bag. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe. A flash of something uncomfortable. But her pride swallowed it fast. She dropped the bag. Not gently. She let it fall and hit the cabin floor with a hard thump that echoed through the jet. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. Don't make this into something it doesn't have to be. Trust me, you don't want that. Then she turned and muttered just loud enough for anyone nearby to catch it. This is exactly what happens when people don't follow the rules. From the galley entrance, a pair of wide eyes watched all of it. Nina Park. 25 years old. Junior flight attendant. 7 months on the job. She stood completely still, holding a tray with 2 glasses on it, barely breathing. She had heard stories about Diane. She had seen Diane be short with certain passengers, but this was different. This was something she couldn't explain away. Nina wanted to speak. Her mouth opened slightly, but the words stayed locked inside her chest. Diane had 14 years of seniority. Diane had already gotten a junior crew member reassigned to cargo duty at a regional airport the previous spring for what everyone understood to be disagreeing with her in front of a client. There was no formal reason on paper. But everyone knew. So Nina stood still. Silent. For now. Back in the main cabin, Marcus sat back down, headphones on, phone in hand. His expression gave nothing away. The kind of stillness that could mean patience, or could mean something building very quietly behind a wall. Diane came back. Her face was flushed. Her composure had thinned to something almost transparent. She planted herself in front of him and spoke loud. Too loud for a private jet. Loud enough that Captain James Olcott might have heard from the cockpit if the door hadn't been sealed for pre-flight. I am telling you for the last time. Show me valid identification proving you belong in this section, or I am radioing ground security and having you physically removed. That is your only option. Marcus took his headphones off slowly, folded them, set them on the armrest. I'd like to speak to your captain. Diane's eyes went wide with something theatrical. You don't get to make that call. You're a passenger. I run this cabin, and I am telling you right now, you do not belong here. She pointed hard toward the rear of the plane. Move, or I make the call. Marcus looked at her. He really looked at her. Long, steady. Then he said, barely above a whisper, do what you need to do. Something inside Diane snapped. Maybe it was the calm. Maybe it was the refusal to bend. Maybe it was the simple, unbearable fact that he wouldn't give her what she needed, which was submission. She reached for his headphones on the armrest. Her hand shot out fast. Marcus pulled back instinctively. A reflex. His arm brushed against her wrist as he moved. Barely contact, the kind of thing that happens when someone reaches into your personal space and you flinch. Diane recoiled like she'd touched fire. She stumbled back a step, eyes wide, mouth open in a way that looked rehearsed, even if it wasn't. Then she swung, open palm, full force, across Marcus Elliott's face. The sound cracked through the cabin like something breaking. Nina dropped both glasses in the galley. They shattered. Her hand went over her mouth. Her eyes filled instantly. Marcus's head turned from the impact. A dark red mark bloomed across his left cheek. He sat completely still. 5 seconds. Maybe more. Diane was breathing hard, chest moving fast, one hand still raised. She pointed her finger directly at his face. Don't you ever put your hands on me. I saw what you did. You grabbed me. I have every right to defend myself. She smoothed her uniform, fixed her hair, and then her voice changed, controlled, practiced, like a completely different person had stepped into her body. I'm calling security. When they get here, I'm telling them exactly what you did. You assaulted a crew member. Marcus didn't speak. He reached slowly into his hoodie pocket. 2 fingers. Deliberate. He pulled out his phone. The screen was already on. The recording app was open. The red timer read, 16 minutes, 44 seconds. He'd started at the moment she first marched toward his seat. He set the phone face up on the armrest. The microphone icon pulsed. He looked at Diane and said, so quietly it was almost gentle. Everything you said. Everything you did. The slap, the threat, the lie you're about to tell security. All of it is right here. He tapped the screen once. Audio and video. Diane stared at the phone. The rage was still there, but underneath it now, something cold moved in. Something she hadn't felt since the moment she walked onto this jet. Doubt. Marcus leaned back in his seat, folded his hands, and said, I'd still like to speak to your captain. Most people stop when they realize they're being recorded. Diane Fenton was not most people. She stared at the phone for a long 3 seconds. The timer kept counting. Then she straightened her spine and smiled, hard, cold, the smile of someone who has talked her way out of worse. Record all you want. We'll see who they believe. A 14-year senior crew member, or some guy in a hoodie who pushed his way into the front section. She let the last word hang. Some guy. Like he was nothing. Like he was nobody. She walked to the intercom panel near the galley and pressed the button for ground operations. When she spoke, her voice had completely transformed, softer, slightly shaky. The performance of a woman in distress. Ground ops, this is Senior Attendant Fenton on Summit Skies. I need security at the aircraft immediately. I have an unruly passenger in the owner's suite refusing crew instructions. A pause. Then quieter, like a confession, he became physically aggressive. He grabbed me. I feel unsafe. Please send someone now. She released the button. Took a breath. When she turned back to the cabin, her expression was composed, professional, and convincingly victimized. From the galley, Nina Park stood in the broken glass she hadn't swept up yet. Her hands were shaking. She had seen every second of what happened. She knew exactly what was real, and what had just been invented for that intercom. She wanted to move. She wanted to speak. But she thought about her own rent, her own career 7 months in. So she stood still. For now. 2 minutes later, boots on the air stairs. 2 ground security officers boarded. One older, composed, name tag that read Greer. One younger, tense, hand near his radio. Diane intercepted them before they were 2 steps into the cabin. She spoke fast, her voice landing somewhere between urgent and fragile. Thank you for coming. The passenger in seat 2 pushed his way into the owner's suite. I asked him to move multiple times. He refused, then grabbed my arm. He's been hostile. I want him removed immediately. Greer nodded. Didn't rush. Walked down the aisle to where Marcus sat. Still seated, still calm. Phone recording on the armrest. Tablet on his lap. Sir. Officer Greer, Summit Skies Ground Security. Can I see some ID? Marcus reached into his back pocket. Slow, deliberate movements. He pulled out his wallet, opened it, and handed over his license. Greer looked at the photo. Looked at the name. Marcus Elliott. Something shifted behind Greer's eyes. He didn't change his expression, but he stepped 3 feet back, turned slightly, and keyed his radio low. Ground ops, this is Greer. Need client verification on tail number Romeo Golf 58. Confirm the registered charter owner for today's flight. Silence. 10 seconds. 15. Then the radio crackled. Greer, tail number RG58 is registered to Ridgeline Group. Today's sole charter client is Marcus Elliott, CEO and principal owner of the registering company. He is the only authorized client on file for this flight. Greer lowered his radio. He stood still for a moment. Then he turned, not toward Marcus. Toward Diane. The look on his face was not rage. It was something quieter and more final than that. The look of a man who just understood exactly what he walked into. He moved past Diane without speaking and walked back to Marcus. His tone was entirely different now. Mr. Elliott, I sincerely apologize for the interruption. Is there anything you need from us right now? Marcus looked at him for a long moment. Then he said 3 words. Get her off. Quiet as a breath. Heavy as a verdict. Greer nodded once. The younger officer turned to stare at Diane. His hand had dropped from his radio. His mouth was slightly open. And Diane stood near the galley with her arms frozen at her sides. The color drained from her face so completely she looked like something made of paper. Her lips moved. No sound came out at first. Then she stammered. Wait, that can't be right. He couldn't possibly be, look at him. There is no way, she didn't finish. She didn't have to. Everyone in that cabin heard what she couldn't make herself say. Nina stepped out of the galley slowly. Hands still trembling. But she stepped out. She looked directly at Officer Greer and she spoke. Her voice cracked at the start. Then it held. I need to tell you what actually happened. Diane's head snapped toward her. Nina, don't. Nina kept going. I saw all of it from the galley. Mr. Elliot was already seated when Miss Fenton approached him. He showed her his booking confirmation. She dismissed it. She picked up his bag without asking and tried to move it to the rear. He stood up and told her to stop. She dropped the bag on the floor. She came back, demanded he leave. He asked to speak to the captain. She reached for his personal belongings. He pulled back. That's all he did. He pulled back. He did not grab her. She slapped him. Then she told him she was going to report him for assault. The cabin was so quiet you could hear the ventilation system. Diane took one step toward Nina. Her voice came out like something hissed through locked teeth. You've been here 7 months. 7. You don't know how anything works here. When this is over, I will make absolutely sure you never. That's enough. Greer's voice landed like a door slamming. Miss Fenton. Stop talking. At that exact moment, the cockpit door opened. Captain James Olcott stepped into the cabin, headset still around his neck, face tight. He had been on the security radio channel for the last 90 seconds. He took in the scene in under a minute. And in that minute, his expression moved from neutral to something cold and certain. He turned to Diane. Miss Fenton. You are relieved of duty effective immediately. Collect your belongings. You have 60 seconds to deplane. Captain, if you just let me. That was not a request. Diane stood frozen for 5 of those 60 seconds. Her eyes moved around the cabin, to Greer, to Nina, to Marcus. Marcus wasn't looking at her. He was already back on his phone. Already past her. Like she was weather that had moved through. Diane grabbed her bag from the galley. Her movements were sharp and uneven now. The composure she had built over 14 years cracked all the way through in under a minute. She walked down the aisle toward the door, no longer confident. A retreat wearing the shape of a walk. At the top of the air stairs, she turned back. Her mouth opened. The cabin door swung shut. The last thing she saw was the back of Marcus Elliot's head. Still quiet. Unmoved. The jet lifted off at 7:18. Inside the cabin, after everything, the silence was soft. Nina brought Marcus a cup of coffee. Her hands hadn't fully stopped shaking. Her voice came out small. Mr. Elliot, I'm so sorry. Marcus looked up for the first time that morning. Something in his face eased. He took the coffee. Thank you, Nina. What you did took real courage. She nodded and walked back to the galley before the tears fell. Damon set the coffee down, picked up his personal phone, and called his attorney. Kevin Briggs. 11 years. Second ring. Marcus, it's early. What happened? Marcus told him everything. Calm, precise, no heat in his voice. The tone of a man who has already decided what comes next. Kevin was quiet for a long moment. Then, I've watched you walk away from things like this more times than I can count. A pause. Don't walk away from this one. I wasn't planning to. Kevin moved fast. By the time the jet landed in Charlotte, 4 things were already in motion. A formal assault complaint filed with the airport police, full recording attached. A demand letter to Summit Skies Aviation's legal team. Written response required in 48 hours. A formal request for Diane Fenton's complete employment history and all prior complaints. And notice that Ridgeline Group was reviewing its charter management contract, which represented $11 million annually and was Summit Sky's single largest client relationship. The Charlotte deal closed without a single complication. 24 hours. That's how long it took. Summit Sky's legal team reviewed the recording 3 times. 3 lawyers. 1 conclusion. Undeniable assault. Falsified security report. No gray area. By noon the following day, Diane Fenton was terminated. Not suspended, not reassigned. Terminated. 14 years, gone in a single phone call. When HR pulled her full file, unfiltered, what they found went quiet in the room. 3 prior complaints from passengers of color. All investigated by the same mid-level manager, a man named Todd Barker. All closed with the same language, insufficient evidence. No further action required. Todd Barker was placed on administrative leave the same afternoon. He never came back. 3 weeks later, the county DA filed 2 criminal counts against Diane Fenton. Simple assault. Filing a false report. The case lasted 3 days. The prosecution played the full recording for the jury. 16 minutes and 44 seconds. Uncut. Every word. The bag hitting the floor, the slap, the fabricated distress call. Nina took the stand, nervous, gripping the edge of the witness box, but her testimony was steady and unshakable. She never wavered. Then Diane took the stand. Under cross-examination, the prosecutor asked one question. Miss Fenton, can you explain why you assumed Mr. Elliot did not belong in the owner's suite of his own aircraft? Diane opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. He didn't look like, the way he was dressed, he didn't seem like. She stopped. 12 jurors stared at her. She never finished. She didn't need to. The jury deliberated for 70 minutes. Guilty. Both counts. 18 months probation. 200 hours community service at a civil rights education center. $15,000 fine. Permanent criminal record. Diane stood in the courtroom as the verdict was read. She didn't cry, didn't react. Just stared straight ahead, like a woman watching the last door in a long hallway swing shut. Marcus gave one interview after the trial. To journalist Sandra Cho. Short conversation. She asked what he wanted people to take from the story. He said, I don't want people to remember my name. I want them to remember that this almost disappeared. If I hadn't pressed record, it would have been her word against mine. And we both know how that usually goes. He flew private, still wore hoodies, still walked through terminals alone. His phone was always ready. Ridgeline Group crossed $4 billion in revenue the following year. 6 new markets. Marcus didn't hold a press conference. Didn't post about it. Just kept building the way he always had, quietly, with purpose. He established the Elliott Access Fund. $8 million dedicated to free legal representation for people facing racial discrimination in service industries, airlines, hotels, restaurants, people who didn't have a recording. People who didn't own the plane. In its first year, the fund took on 70 cases. 14 settled. 3 went to trial. All 3 won. Nina Park never went back to Summit Skies. She didn't have to. The charter company that absorbed Ridgeline's fleet management offered her a senior flight attendant position the same week she left, a title that would have taken her years to earn at her old company. She accepted the same day. When a trade magazine asked why she spoke up that morning knowing what it might cost her, she paused a moment before answering. Because I saw what happened, and staying quiet would have made me part of it. Another pause. Silence isn't neutral. Silence is a choice. That morning, I decided I was done making that choice. Diane Fenton fulfilled every requirement of her sentence. She applied to 4 airlines. All 4 rejected her. 3 hospitality companies. Same result. Her name had become a case study, not a villain in a cautionary tale, but the cautionary tale itself. Referenced in HR training. Cited in corporate compliance documentation. A name people used when they wanted to explain what happens when bias goes unchecked and accountability finally shows up. A local reporter found her 8 months after the trial. She had moved to a small town 2 states away. She was working retail. She declined to comment. The reporter wrote one line about her: a woman living in the long shadow of a single morning. Marcus closed his eyes on the flight back from Charlotte. He thought about his mother taking the bus home before sunrise. He thought about every room he had ever walked into where someone looked at him the way Diane had looked at him that morning. He thought about every time he had let it go. He opened his eyes. Outside the window, the clouds broke open into clean, open sky. His phone rested on the armrest. The recording app was closed now, but his finger hovered near it anyway. Because in a world that decides who you are before you open your mouth, proof isn't optional. It's the only thing that stands between your truth and someone else's story about you.